Have everyone that we're going to have. We were scheduled to start at 6, but we'll try to make this a brief meeting. So I'll just start with a roll call for the record. Let's see, Joe.
Yeah, Joe Tom, 11 Ada Drive.
Okay, and Michelle.
Yes, hi, Michelle Rulo, 68 David Lewis Drive.
Okay, and I am Paul First, and those are the only members that we have present this evening. We do have a quorum, and we are also joined by Ruth Glazer and Town Administrator and Mark Farren, Selectman.
Good evening.
Okay, so the next item on the pledge, we'll just go ahead and take care of the pledge here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
Under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so the next item on the agenda are meeting minutes. So Ruth, I know you don't have minutes ready for us, but I just wanted to kind of give the committee an update here.
Yep, so I have Kathy on trying to do the minutes.
Okay, very good. And these are going to be very brief minutes. The legal record for the meeting in accordance with FOAA is the recording. And speaking of which, Ruth, we are being recorded, correct?
Yep, I am recording.
Excellent, thank you. So that is the legal record of the meeting, and those should be available. Those recordings of the meetings on town hall streams and can be accessed via the town website.
Yeah, we are working on it.
We still are doing just very abbreviated minutes. There'll be a record of any decisions. There'll probably be a paragraph. That's about it. And that was for November 9th, November 23rd, December 1st, and tonight.
Oh, hold on a second. Michelle, I accidentally made you host. Can you give me host back? Sorry.
Maybe.
I was gonna have fun with it because I'm co-host.
Co-host, yes.
If you tell me where I'm going, I don't see anything.
Okay, so go over my name. And where it says more.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I can try to be the host.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So if everyone could mute their microphone, that'd be a great place to start. I know we're still getting some feedback this evening. We talked about just briefly here at the outset, Mark and Ruth and I talked about that we had received an email from Brian Pike, who is one of the other committee members. And Brian sent a very nice email and said that unfortunately, he's had a very big project that he's in charge of at work this CIP season, and they're doing a rollout of the project. I guess they're trying to roll it out this month or here very shortly. And so he's been unable to attend, and it sounds like it's been all consuming. So, he basically said that he values the work of the committee. He thinks that the charge is important, what the committee is doing is important, and he values the work. He'd like to continue on next year, but he sends his regrets that he hasn't been able to attend and that he will not be able to attend the rest of this season. So he is still on the committee, and we hope that he'll be with us next year. All right. Let's see, I was hoping to kick things off tonight. Of course, at our last meeting, we had the department heads and we posed our questions to the department heads and received their feedback on our questions and went over the applications with them. And we're getting to the point tonight of, I guess the hope tonight is that we resolve any outstanding questions with regard to applications so that we can move forward with scoring. One of the items that in my mind is still a significant item, and it's still, it's in flux just because of the timing of the process, is the unspent funds that go back to Public Works and Fire Department reserves at the end of the year. And this is unspent 2020 operating funds. These are unspent operating funds for the Public Works Department and the Fire Department that go back to their respective reserves at the end of the year. And so I was hoping Ruth could give us an update on those, because that money's not accounted for anywhere in the spreadsheets. And so, for example, if we're receiving a reserve request for $100,000 from, let's say, Public Works, and I don't know what's going back, but let's say 30,000 is going back. In my mind, the request is a net 70 rather than 100,000, because that 30,000 is unaccounted for. So I think somehow we have to reflect that in our ranking. And as we're considering each application and the need for each application, we do have to consider what is anticipated to go back, or at least that makes sense to me. So I was hoping that Ruth could give us an update tonight on where we stand with Public Works and Fire Department, and what it looks like at this point is going to go back. And of course, got a snowstorm coming. We don't know exactly, but Ruth, how does it look?
So I'm gonna share my screen for a second because it's easier, I think, to show you guys what I do. No? Okay, can you see my screen? Yeah, okay, thanks, Michelle. So on a monthly basis, I go through the budget and I put in all of these figures. So under November, see where it's black, so that's figured in. The orange are my estimates, and these are estimates based on the last several months, and so there may be outliers, so I can't guarantee 100% that this is where it's going to land. And I suspect that both Calvin and Chief may disagree with some of my numbers, but it's looking to me like the fire department is probably going to return about $35,000 is my guess, which probably is $5,000 one way or the other. So, and then, oh, come on, let me go down. Okay, sorry, I don't have my usual mouse. It's driving me crazy. And then, not to make you guys dizzy or anything. And then I did Public Works as well. You'll see November, the total spending was 243, 248, but that was increased substantially because the paving line was paid out that particular month, the 195,000. So my estimate or guesstimate for this month would be about 104,000 that we would spend. So that means about $70,000 would go back into the Public Works Fund. So I would also share, hold on. So then I'm going to go and share a different part of my screen. Okay, and then this is back to the assigned fund balances. This is one of the tabs on your worksheets that I sent you. And what I've done is I've updated. So if you look over here at the fire and rescue, let me go up a little bit so you guys can see the headers. Okay, so as of 12/14, which was yesterday, for fire and rescue, we had received from the ambulance the $52,738. So that will go into capital, definitely. There may be a little bit more, but it won't be substantially more.
What did your previous spreadsheet estimate? The one that we received, Ruth, was that 40?
We were down about, I think we were at 37 when I first started with that. So what I had done is I had taken the actual number that we had collected up to that time, and I had filled that in. And now the actual number up to what we've collected now is a little over almost $53,000.
So it sounds like approximately an additional 15,000 is likely to go into reserve for the fire department from the ambulance funds.
53,000, almost.
Right. Well, the initial spreadsheet accounted for 37,000.
Right, but I didn't, So the 52,000 is total, it's not,
Yep, I understand.
okay.
Okay.
So
So
yes, an additional
52,000
15,
total.
yeah, so an additional 15,000 roughly from the last time you looked at it.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
They have spent out of their fund this year 59,160. So that went up a little bit. They purchased a couple more. I want to say it was gear, but I don't remember exactly what it was that they purchased from their capital fund. And then you'll see after that 59,000, I have the estimate of the 35,000 that would go back in, which would bring them to about the 298. And that could go a little bit either way, but that's where I'm throwing my dart.
Right. Okay. Now, these numbers are not reflected in their reserve requests.
No,
That's the issue.
no. The select board requested that I not put them in there because they were not something that could be foreseen. You couldn't count on it, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
Ruth, can I ask a question? Just so I'm
course,
clear, the Public Works and the Fire Department are the only two that go back into capital, right? Everything on the administration side, that goes into undesignated funds, right?
Yep. And then the only other thing that goes back into the capital would be the telecommunications.
Telecommunications, yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Okay,
and recreation too. The parks and recreation goes back into,
okay.
but
Thanks.
that's not usually substantial.
so, I think certainly when we give our ranking and our recommendation to the selectmen, we can provide this caveat. But I think it begs the question of how we consider these applications when we score them, whether we take these new numbers into account or not.
So is it something that they would take into consideration after looking at our rankings when they made their decision?
Mark, what do you think?
I'd say the budget committee at first would probably, when I was on the budget committee, I always took that into account. You know, how much was left over and how much you were asking. But I think we will have to take it into account this year because we're gonna need to make sure we cover everything from a budget standpoint. We're gonna have to look at every line.
Okay, so, again, if Michelle, if you could also, thank you. So again, the question is when we're scoring the reserve requests, I'm assuming then if that's the case, then we just score them according to the amount they requested, even though in a sense, the amount's not accurate because the balances of those reserves are going to go up significantly by the unspent, because of the unspent 2020 operating funds that the selectmen will roll into the reserves. So, I guess, the important thing is consistency, that we're all approaching it the same way. Michelle or Joe, would you like to weigh in here with regard to how we can approach this?
Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure because you make a good point. I mean, if they requested 100,000, but they're going to already have 60 coming back, just as an example. So
Yeah,
does that make a difference in our thought process, knowing they already are getting 60? I mean, it might. So that
Well,
I'm sure, yeah, the best way to do that. I guess all we can really do is base it off of the amount they've requested, knowing that they have funds potentially coming back.
But I also, I something to add. I mean, I didn't expect to be the budget committee here either. So, I mean, the numbers are interesting from a standpoint of we get an understanding of what's available and what extra they're asking for. But as far as a rankings concerned, it's a ranking on need for the town. You know, what is the most important thing that the town needs? And then I'm going to rely on, quite frankly, the other committees to figure out if the need of that is fundable. You know, whether they have $10 in their account or, you know, $500,000 in their account. I mean, if I say that the guy with $500,000 in his account doesn't need something, well, then he can just keep the 500,000 there until he really does. And the person who has $10 in an account, then that's the person who really needs something. That's what I expect the rating to show is the actual need. What do we think the need for the town is? And then let the other committees do their job as far as budgetary items. So I'll be honest, the numbers are interesting, but if we really need something, then we need to go get it. And figure out how to manipulate the money is, I'll say, up to the selectmen and up to the budget committee on how that gets allocated. That's kind of my 2 cents on this whole thing, you know.
Yeah, I generally agree with you, Joe, in many respects. I think the only place where it comes into play is the reserve accounts. And because it does have an impact, I think, in the scoring of a reserve account and the need of a reserve account. If, for example, you have a large purchase coming up in the future, the account balance is low, and the amount, and at that point, the amount that they're requesting to put into reserve can, I think, play a role in the
Yeah.
scoring.
Yeah, no,
play a role in the scoring. So, but that said, I think the only place where it would really come into play is these two reserve requests. The fire department and the fire department and public works. And in this case, the public works department, we're anticipating that approximately $70,000 is going back. Fire department, it sounds like roughly an additional 50 is going back. So the differential between the two isn't that great. I'm just thinking, is this enough to kind of sway, in terms of the ranking, to sway the numbers so that one reserve ends, if we don't take this into account, one reserve ends up higher than the other, or if we do, that it could change the relative position of those two reserve requests.
But the reserve request is, again, for planning purposes, right? We're talking about a fire engine that's, in the future. Granted, we have a application for, immediate need, right? To upgrade some of the equipment. And the same with the truck, with the plow truck, that that's a future need. So I do agree that what they have already in reserve is important, because really what it comes down to is are they asking for enough now to actually not hit folks in the chin, lack of a better approach here, or better description, when it comes time to actually do that in 2 or 3 years, are we putting enough away, and are we recommending that they putting enough away? Are they asking for enough now, right? I mean, there's a whole timing to this in regards to, how much money we make by putting money away early versus how much, bonds and whatever will cost us later, right? That's the trade-off. And I honestly expect the finance committee to do a lot of that footwork to figure out, and maybe they need to input into this ahead of time versus later, as to, do they think that the amount that's being requested now makes sense from a long-term capital gains standpoint and interest rate standpoint, right? I mean, if we think the interest rate's going to go up and we're better off borrowing money tomorrow versus 3 years from now, I mean, nobody's got a crystal ball, but you're better off packing money away now, where it's cheaper money per se, versus having to go and borrow money for a higher interest rate later.
So,
There's a balance there that needs to be made, and I'm not sure this committee's actually got a scope to actually go and figure that part of it out.
so what
I-
more is, sorry,
I'm
Paul.
wondering, looking forward, if, we're going to run into this problem every year, or where we stand, Mark, with regard to changing the town's budget cycle from a calendar year to a fiscal year. I know there has been quite a bit of discussion. Where does that stand? Can you bring us up to date?
Yeah,
Part of
we
this
haven't
is
talked, we
because
haven't
of
talked
that
about that in a
issue.
long time, as far as I know. We haven't talked about that recently, so.
I see. So
I think
do-
the last time we talked about, we were talking about, possibly depending on what the town manager does, and maybe that's a project we look at in the future, but we haven't talked about it recently.
I'd say 2 issues here. One is we have, Durham is in this unusual position of having a calendar year budget rather than a fiscal year budget. That's the first issue. The second issue is that this money, this is the way we handle these unspent funds. Rather than them going to undesignated, they are directed, toward by some old town meeting vote, directed to these accounts. So just recognizing that it does make the work of this committee a little more challenging. And I don't know what the opportunities are in the future to hopefully try to sort some of those things out. But just recognizing that. That said, I don't think there's really much more we can do this year other than rate the requests, I guess, as we receive them. I think that probably makes the most sense. And then maybe when we forward our recommendation to the selectmen, we can point this out, that we're aware of these other funds that were to be rolled, but at the time, we rated these projects, they hadn't been rolled yet. So there wasn't any way really for us to account for them or for them to be accounted for in the requests. So does that seem like a reasonable, and we could also point out these other 2 issues that really kind of make it a challenge for us to get good information with, good or how should I say, really accurate financial information for the reserve balances, just because of the timing of the process and the fact that, this money is rolled back into these accounts rather than going to undesignated.
So Paul, just for, just to look at it, if you look at the screen, so the difference, because they spent the $59,000 this year, this is the fire department, because they spent the $59,000 this year. They're going to collect somewhere around 52,000 and perhaps put back 35,000. The board did have us account for the funds from the EMA services, but actually the difference in the funds from the EMA services this year with the amount that they actually spent is going to only be, well, actually, hold on a second, because this up here includes those. So this is what's collected in 2021. So actually that doesn't change. Sorry. Okay.
Basically all I'll say on this is in order for this committee to do its job, it needs accurate reserve balances, actual reserve balances that are anticipated going into the budget year.
Well, maybe you don't, maybe what you do.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah, but maybe
Because it's impossible to get them because of these other things.
right. No, Paul, I understand. But maybe what you do is you adjust for it in the following year.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But I think that it comes into the challenges that you want to be able to take it into account. You really want accurate reserve balances when you're doing your rankings and your consideration of the applications. But I think we've probably spent enough time on this, and we ought to move on to other questions about the applications. I just, I wanted to point this out and make sure we have a way to hopefully address it. And if it makes sense with the other committee members, I think the way to address it is maybe just with a note when we refer on our rankings that, we know this and, there still are these issues, but we score the applications as we receive them with the information that we received. What do you think, Michelle and Joe? Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm in agreement. Sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, good deal. All right. Any outstanding questions on any of the applications or the replacement schedules? How about questions about the scoring, using the scoring sheet? Now, I know in my case, I haven't done my scoring yet. Joe, I think you may have already done your scoring. So you may be, when you did your scoring, did any questions come up?
No, I think, no, I mean, everything actually came out about where I thought it would.
Okay,
You know, let's see here, sorry, this machine, the other machine I did the scoring on isn't running right now. So I think that, hang on here, I'm there now, let me see. Bear with me. Yeah, I mean, I think that the scoring came out pretty, it's one of those things where when you score, you end up, it's kind of funny, you go score things and then you go back later and review it. You're like, you end up in the same place you originally were when you're at the end, even if you move some things around. So it's
sure.
no different than, I'll say it, and I hate saying it this way, but when you actually go through like a review cycle for your employees, you
Yes.
pretty much know where everybody is in the beginning. And you go and do this exercise and you're like, wow, that came out pretty close. And
Yeah.
I think everything came out about where I thought it would end up. So I used the spreadsheet from last season, and it put the priority on the scuba air packs. And then it went from there, basically the fire rescue capital funding is important. And so is the DPW truck. So they came out basically at the same score or 1 point apart from each other. And then the other two reorg and stuff ended up, and the reorg and the 1.5 ton dump came out less. So I don't think that I'm probably far off from where we actually need to be, and probably where the department heads think it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, I will offer that, you know, I think the town reorg is a bigger thing than we're actually, you know, for us to just rate ourselves. I think that's a huge undertaking. I do agree that, you know, having somebody give their input into that is certainly appropriate. As well as the ability, you know, we're hiring a town manager, right, is on the docket here to go do. And I think that person needs to have a large input into the reorganization. So that was kind of why I'll say that maybe that didn't rank as high, because I think you really need that person in place to be able to make this effective. And so not saying don't do it, but I'm not sure this is the right timing for it. So that's kind of my view of the I think I hit the 2, 4, 5. I got 5 projects here. Hopefully I got the right amount. No, but so I think that you know, again, liability for a DPW truck. You know, we need DPW trucks for doing you know, plowing and sanding and salting and keeping the road safe. Same with the fire department. You need to keep that going. We've invested a lot of money in that department, and that certainly needs to. We don't keep the money flowing in those 2 areas that I'll call them the big areas of the town for funding next to the school system. Those are the biggest, and we need to keep our eyes on them and make sure that they're funded appropriately to the expectation of what people want for services in town. So, you know, that's kind of where I stand on most of the subjects here, but they were all very close. I mean, they're points apart from each other when you go and start rating them in effectiveness, need, and you know, how they'll help the community. They're all very important subjects that we're talking about here.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's, you know, as I mentioned, I haven't scored these yet, but on first blush, that's certainly not inconsistent with how I'm considering these applications. You know, adding to the fleet is certainly a, you know, has to overcome a hurdle, I think, too. You know, it's not on the schedule. It's new, would be a new vehicle. I think a lot of the things, you know, it's hard because a lot of the things that I read in that application make sense with regard to needing a better way to plow these subdivision roads
Yeah, on that
and
one there, yeah.
heavier equipment. But I think there are still a few inconsistencies that need to maybe be ironed out with regard to how these vehicles are, the smaller trucks are used.
And
Yeah.
I think, you know, and you know, that could be scheduling tools to make things easier. That could be a number of different ways to attack that. I mean, I get the underlying issue of not having enough vehicles to
Yeah.
get people moved around, but I also certainly understand that it's a huge undertaking. I do understand that you do need a vehicle that large, after talking to a few people that do this for a living, that you do need a larger truck, you know, the 1.5 ton truck that they're asking for. I mean, it's certainly appropriate for what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And so I have no argument there of at this point. You know, I kind of thrown around the idea of repurposing the DPW Calvin's truck there, and using that. But he kind of made it pretty clear that that just wasn't heavy enough. And in my conversation with folks, I now agree that you need something larger for that kind of work, to reduce maintenance on it, and possibly, you don't want to break a truck, literally. I mean, if you push too much, I mean, you can run into an issue over time. So yeah, so it's definitely an important thing that we should think about, and something they should, maybe with I won't say better, but different planning. You might be able to get around that for a while. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure that will save us anything in the long run. I think you're still gonna have to do something with the plowing, and if that offsets, like, replacing a larger truck by a year or two, then that's a big savings. When you start looking at it like that, what will it offset for having that truck go out versus a larger truck to do the same job? I would say there's a savings there. So especially when you can move the snowbanks back with the smaller rig and keep the other one off the road.
Or is it possible to offset the purchase of that new 1.5 ton by eliminating one of the smaller dump trucks? I think is might be another question. I applaud Calvin for bringing this forward, because clearly he recognizes a need with regard to the subdivisions, these subdivision roads, and we have a lot of them.
Yeah, and we'll put more
because-
in too. We got a couple, 2 or 3 going in right now, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Right,
yeah,
that's a good point. That's
some
a good
large
point.
ones. So
Yeah.
I think it'll get a lot more use as time moves on here.
But of course, the
Sorry.
business of this committee is long-term planning, and we have to consider this application within the context of the other applications that we've also received. And fortunately, we don't have very many to consider this year, but they do seem to fall into an order that I wouldn't be surprised if there's some consensus this year around that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Michelle, how about you? Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Mostly just been listening back and forth, trying to process all of it. I guess the one thing with the plow truck, just thinking through about, when you're trying to do something, whether it's work or home, and you're not using the best equipment, how challenging it can be, more time consuming. And, is it worthwhile to spend the extra money? Are you saving costs by doing that, whether it's time, wear and tear on other equipment? So I guess that's the piece I'm trying to weigh, trying to use a screwdriver or one that's, a manual versus an automatic. So it certainly goes a lot faster one way than the other. So if you're using a plow truck that's not efficient or as effective, are we losing out on that?
Mark, is this a discussion that with regard to the
Say that again, Paul. You were cutting out.
have the selectmen discussed, has it come before them? I'm assuming, of course, the application came before them, but what was the discussion of the select board with regard to this application for the 1.5 ton plow truck?
We haven't really gone through that yet. We're waiting for the CIP committee to come forward with the recommendations, and then we take that and go forward.
Okay, thank you. So, Michelle's point is certainly a good one, with regard to, having the right tools to do the job. On the other hand, So I think that, hopefully in the process of ranking for each of us, that will play out with regard to the plow truck save versus the reserve request. Those types of questions.
Yeah, I feel like the plow truck, at least for me, is my biggest question or struggle to work through.
Yeah.
But we'll see, once I go through the sheets, I think it'll be a little clearer. It'll kind of stand out, work itself out.
Right. And of course, we'll have another chance to discuss this when we come back to approve our recommendation to the selectmen. So, yeah, I totally agree that, or I'm totally on board with it. We should all follow our own thought process here, and that send our scores to Michelle. She'll collate them. We'll see how they come out, and then we'll have that discussion. With regard to that, Michelle, when would you like the scores by? And, luckily not too many applications this year, and there's only 3 of us, but we're due to meet on the 21st. So when should we plan to have it?
If you can get them to me, so I have time to do them this weekend. It shouldn't
Okay.
take too long for me to put it in, and the sheet's all set up, so I just have to plug in the numbers.
All right, so by the end of the day.
Yeah, Friday or first thing Saturday, something.
Okay, sounds good. And I did send around Michelle's spreadsheet so we can I'll do what Joe did last year, which was, plug my numbers directly into your spreadsheet. So that'll hopefully make it easier for you.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions regarding scoring the applications? Great. All right, so our next meeting date is the 21st, which is, I believe that's a Monday, isn't it? Yeah, okay, so it's Monday, the 21st, 6 o'clock. And same channel, same place. So I think that's all I've got this evening. Does anyone else have business that we need to discuss before doing our scoring and sending our scores over to Michelle?
So there's definitely just the 3 of us doing the scoring.
I have not heard. My understanding is that Brian will not be scoring because he indicated that he plans to sit the rest of the season out. I have not heard from Curtis. I don't know, Ruth, if you've heard from Curtis. It sounds like I believe you mentioned that you hadn't.
Not since the last time I talked to him, no.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, I suspect that, I don't know what to say with regard to Curtis, but I suspect that it will probably only be the 3 of us. And everyone has received the material. I think that, Curtis is the only unknown. I guess I would be quite surprised if he stepped up at this point to score. And as we indicated previously, I think that it is important that if you do score and you've missed meetings, because there's we try to take into account a lot of information in this committee. I think it's very worthwhile to go back and listen to the meetings if you were unable to attend. So my hope would certainly be, but in this case, it's kind of extreme because he hasn't been able to attend any of the meetings this year. So anyway, I think it's really just the 3 of us, and we'll get you the scores by Friday. Certainly let me know, Michelle, if you do receive something from Curtis. I think that might be helpful to know.
Sure.
And we'll proceed from there. That's all I've got. I think there's only one last thing left to do.
I make a motion that we adjourn for the evening.
I'll second that.
Excellent.
Excellent.
That was Joe and
That was
Michelle.
Joe and Michelle.
Hey, guys, enjoy the snow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It'll
Oh,
be
it should be fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it always? How much are they predicting? I haven't
They're,
got that.
they're up to a
They're
foot
up to a
right now.
foot right now.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah,
Up to
they
a
got-
foot